Recently, I went to my second ever Warhammer 40k tournament, the Hammer and Bolter's Duo tournament, organized by the Tin Soldiers of Antwerp. Well, my first ever tournament was the same one last year, where my great friend Jojo and I finished somewhere in the middle of the pack. This year, he asked me if we wanted to compete again, and I of course said yes. If you don't know, a duo tournament is where you form a team with another person, you each bring a 1000 points army, and then you play a 2000 points game against another team. While talking about what we could bring, I made a joke saying, well, we could bring both Fulgrim with my Emperor's Children and Magnus with your 1000 Sons. We then took that joke seriously and brought both. We knew such a list is kinda disgusting, but since the cutoff date for sending in your list was before the March 2026 data slate, there were still a lot of Necron players who brought 3 Catan, so we kinda didn't feel bad about it. My Court of the Phoenician Emperor's Children's list consisted of Fulgrim, a Demon Prince with wings, 2 Lord Exultants who were both leading a unit of 5 Infractors, and a unit of 3 Flawless Blades. Jojo's Grand Coven 1000 Sons list consisted of Magnus, a Demon Prince with wings with the Eldritch Vortex of enhancement, a unit of 2 Chaos Spawn, a Mutalith Vortex Beast, a unit of 3 Zangors enlightened with Fatecaster Great Bows, Jesus Christ, that's such a long name for a unit, and a unit of 10 Zangors. We didn't really expect too high of a placement since we didn't really bring a lot of units, but then again, we kinda just wanted to bring 2 Primarchs because it sounded fun and that is what Warhammer is all about in the end. However, the missions we would be playing were not your standard chapter approved missions. They were both missions that were published at the back of the White Dwarf magazines, and they are honestly very cool and unique. If you haven't checked them out yet, I can only recommend them since they can have super random and game swinging mechanics. However, both of the missions would be played on a set of WTC terrain layout. So off we went to Antwerp, ready to play this tournament as the Nemesis. That name is an inside joke, by the way, don't worry about it. In the first round, we would be pitted against Michiel and Bjorn, calling themselves Beep and Boop. Michiel brought Chaos Space Marines and Bjorn brought Necrons. However, Bjorn didn't bring a stinky Catan list, so all was good. Michiel used the Fellhammer Siege Host Detachment and brought Fabius Bile leading 5 chosen, Vashtor, 10 Cultists, 1 Chaos Predator Annihilator, 1 Forge Fiend, 1 Venom Crawler, and 5 War Talents. Bjorn used the Star Shatter Arsenal Detachment and brought Orokan the Diviner leading 10 Necron Warriors, a Chronomancer leading 10 Immortals, a Canoptech Doomstalker, 2 units of 3 Scarab Swarms, a Doomsday Arc, a unit of 5 Flayed Ones, a Locust Heavy Destroyer, and 3 Ophidian Destroyers. We were kind of worried about Orokan since if he uses his once per game ability, all his successful wound rolls become devastating wounds, and that would have probably melted our Primarchs if he used it. The mission we played against him is called Mobile Assets. There are 6 objectives in No Man's Land. These objectives move during the game. Basically, at the end of each turn, the attackers roll a die. On a 1 to 3, the outlines move. On a 4 to 6, the middle one does. Next, they roll another die. On a 1 to 3, the objectives move towards the top of the battlefield. On a 4 to 6, they move towards the bottom. Lastly, they roll 2d6. The result of that roll plus 3 is the number of inches the objectives move. This is quite an interesting mechanic since there is a chance that an objective moves away from your unit before you can score it, or an objective moves underneath your unit and you suddenly do score points. This means that it is quite smart to just stand on the lines with a few units. There also wasn't a limit on the number of points you could score per turn, and with 5 points per objective marker, you could theoretically score 30 points on primary in 1 turn. The max you could score this way was 40 points. The last 10 primary points were awarded to the team that at the end of the game had the most amount of points from their army left on the board that was not battle shocked. We decided to only put my Demon Prince in reserves. They put the Warp Talents and the Ophidian Destroyers in reserves. So, round 1 starts, we get the first turn and pull Area Denial and Overwhelming Force. With their scout move, one of my Infractor units was able to rush across the board, kill the Flayed Ones who were standing on an objective and screen out a bit to block some of the movement. Jojo advanced his Zangors towards the center of the battlefield and thus we scored both secondaries. Nothing really happened other than that. In their first turn, they pulled Display of Might and Tempting Target. Quick side note, I didn't keep track of discarded secondaries, so there might be some secondaries that are illogical to keep, but that might be because because they already redrew with a command point. Fabius Bile with the Chosen managed to kill the Infractors in melee, but failed to kill the Lord Exultant, who then killed some of the Chosen. They moved up a bit, shot some things, nothing major happened, and at the end of the round they scored Display of Might and discarded Tempting Target, since we chose an objective that was basically impossible to get. The score at the end of round 1, 8-4 in our favor. Round 2 started and we scored 10 primary points. We pulled Assassination and Established Locus. They didn't have anything near the center of the battlefield, so Established Locus was a free 2 points. I decided to still play a little bit reserved, since there was a lot of firepower staring at the firing lane. Fulgrim would be rushing through to kill what I wanted him to kill. But I did move up my second Infractor units, fell back with my Lord Exultant to make space for Jojo's Demon Prince, and used Deep Strike to put my Demon Prince on the other side of the board. Jojo put his Mutilith, Vortex Beast and Magnus to shoot at the Canoptech Doomstalker, but it sadly didn't go down. I was able to charge my Infractors into Orocon's unit and destroy the entire unit, scoring us Assassination. During that charge, they did heroically intervene with the cultists, but they didn't do any damage. Jojo charged Fabius with his Demon Prince, killed him, but Fabius came back alive through his ability at the end of the fight phase. In their second round, they still didn't really come forward, and I think that was their biggest mistake all game. They pulled Bring It Down and Recover Assets and scored 10 primary points. They were able to shoot the Mutilith Vortex Beast to death, so they scored Bring It Down, and they did recover assets with 2 units. I cannot remember which ones though. They did Deep Strike the Warp Talons 9 inches from the Flawless Blades, but they failed to charge. Fabius Bile charged into my Flawless Blades, and Vashtor charged into Jojo's Demon Prince. While Vashtor did kill that Demon Prince, Fabius gave himself 3 mortal wounds with a Dark Pact ability and completely whiffed. The Flawless Blades then easily killed him for a second and final time. My Infractors then killed all the cultists. The score at the end of round 2, 25-21 in our favor. At the beginning of round 3, I told Jojo that this should be the go turn, and he agreed. This turn massively swung the game into our favor. We pulled behind enemy lines and marked for death. In our movement phase, we basically sent everything forward as far as possible. Jojo then shot the Canoptech Doomstalker dead, the Flawless Blade charged Necron Warriors but got interviewed by Scarps, who then exploded in their face. Fulgrim charged Vashtor and did just enough damage to kill him. My Demon Prince charged the Predator Annihilator and killed it, which then exploded and damaged the Doomsday Arc, the Venom Crawler, my Infractors and my Demon Prince. My Infractors charged Venom Crawler and killed that one, which was a Marked for Death unit, at which point they were also wholly within their deployment zone. At the start of their turn, Michiel was stabled and Bjorn realized that his Necrons were not powerful enough to kill everything still coming their way. They didn't score any primary points since the objectives had moved and drew Marked for Death and Sabotage. They sadly didn't have the board presence to score Sabotage and only killed my Demon Prince, the Infractors and the Flawless Blades, with which they scored 2 points on Marked for Death. The score at the end of round 3, 43-23 in our favor. At this point, the game was basically over. We scored 15 points on primary in our turn and drew no prisoners and Sabotage. No prisoners was very easy to get with both Fulgrim and Magnus on the table, and Jojo's Tsangor scored Sabotage for 3 points. On their turn, they sadly didn't score primary or secondary, having drawn Established Locus and Overwhelming Force. Score at the end of round 4, 66-23. At the beginning of round 5, we scored 5 points in primary, kept at the temporary max of 40 primary points and drew Bring It Down and Display of Might. We then tabled the Necrons, scoring us both, and since Bjorn couldn't do anything anymore, that was basically the game. We received the extra points for having the most units on the board, and after getting points for the battle ready paint jobs, the result was 99-33, a win for us. So that was a very successful game 1. Also a massive shout out to Bjorn and Michiel, they were great opponents to play against. They also scored way more in their second game with 91 points, which I am still glad for because they are both good players, the dice just weren't in their favor. At this point we were quite happy with how we performed. There were, if I remember correctly, only 2 points who actually got the max of 100 points in their first game. So it would be interesting to see who we would be pitted against in game 2. But that is for another video because I have been editing this thing for such a long time and I just wanted to get a video out, so the second game will be for a second video. But for now, I hope I will see you then. If you like this video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of my content, comment down below what you think, and I will see you in the next one.